A string of text messages have come to light in the Daily Mail between Brittany Higgins, her fiancé David Shiraz, and Nine newspaper columnist Peter FitzSimons. The Daily Mail reports that FitzSimons speaks about how the Sydney Morning Herald was about to report on Brittany Higgins' book deal. He says in the text message, they clearly have a source from one of the publishers that didn't get over the line. They know little detail, but much better that they break it than News Limited. It won't have a negative spin. He writes, it might be good for me to background the reporter that you are committing a big chunk to Rape Crisis Centre. Ms Higgins responded, yes, please, that would be wonderful. And her fiancé, David Shiraz, adds, just make sure we don't confirm the large advance. Don't want them thinking you're making millions. FitzSimons responded that the reporter said to me she believed it was $400,000. I said, nothing like that, I will talk her down. Now, this text exchange was reported to have taken place on April the 13th, 2021. Later that day, it was reported by the Nine papers, by the Sydney Morning Herald, that Brittany Higgins received an estimated $250,000 advance for her book deal, which we now know was actually a $325,000 advance. So it seems like there might have been a bit of misleading information from Peter FitzSimons to his own newspaper. The report also included the detail that Ms Higgins made a contractual commitment to donate half her royalties to the Canberra Rape Crisis Centre. We've today reached out to the Crisis Centre to see if that money has indeed been donated. We haven't heard back from them. Let's bring in the Daily Mail reporter who broke the story, Charlotte Karp. Charlotte, great to have you with me today to talk about this very juicy exclusive. You revealed these text messages between Brittany Higgins, David Shiraz, Peter FitzSimons about the book deal. Is it appropriate, do you think, that Brittany Higgins was signing a book deal worth hundreds of thousands of dollars before the trial had even gone ahead?
Well, I can't say whether it was appropriate or not, but what I can say is it was unusual and it was a bit of a risk because what if he'd been found not guilty? It's quite hard to publish a book about your allegations if the person you're making the allegations against was found not guilty, and as we have it, there was no conviction recorded. So that book is still on hold, I believe. So I can't say whether it was inappropriate, but it was definitely unusual.
Look, you've also revealed an exclusive story yesterday in the Daily Mail. This is a story that went around the country about text messages between the ABC's 7:30 political editor Laura Tingle and Brittany Higgins. They were very friendly in tone. Laura Tingle in her text message to Brittany Higgins sent hugs. Does this give the public, do you think, an insight into why media coverage in this case has overwhelmingly favoured Brittany Higgins?
I think there are two parts to that. So I do think that it gave the public a really good insight into how these relationships work. It sort of lifted the veil a little bit. But in terms of why the coverage appeared to favour Miss Higgins, I think that was because we only had her side of the story for a really long time. So we knew that Bruce Lehrmann had pleaded not guilty, but he actually didn't get to tell his story until the trial in October. So I do think that that's why it came across as favouring Ms Higgins.
Look, there was frustration from police that Brittany Higgins kept doing media and public appearances, and that Lisa Wilkinson kept doing them as well. Does it seem like Higgins, or at least her supporters, were courting publicity and even prioritising it ahead of the police investigation and then the trial?
Well, it is in the public record, and I was in court during the trial last October, and she did say that she did the interview with Lisa Wilkinson and with Samantha Maiden as well before she finished giving her police interviews. So that is in the public record. She did do that, and she was cross-examined on that fact as well. So. Yeah.
I think that's interesting. You know, the story that you broke today has those text messages from Peter FitzSimons saying on News Limited would give it a negative spin. But of course, it was Samantha Maiden from News.com that broke this story in the first place. So it's absurd to say News would give it a negative spin. Look, were you surprised? You've broken these stories, revealing these text messages. Were you surprised when you got hold of them and you read about the cosy relationship between Higgins and some of the most famous journalists in our media industry?
Look, I wasn't super surprised because I know how these things do work, but I do think that for the average person who doesn't get insight into the way media works, I mean, everybody knows that journalists do have relationships with sources and things. That's not something new. But yeah, I definitely think that people would have been surprised to read it themselves.
Yeah. Have you got more coming? Are there more stories, more text messages?
I can't say.
All right, we'll keep an eye on it. Charlotte Karp, Daily Mail, thank you for your time. And I think that's about the first time I've ever had a Daily Mail journalist on my program because they don't often break stories, but there you go.